Before there were names, there was only silence. Not the silence of an empty room, and not the silence between two breaths, but the silence of a world that had never learned what morning meant. There was no dawn to promise anything, no dusk to take it away. There was no time, and in that endless stillness the first fear was born, that nothing would ever change, because when nothing changes, nothing can live. That is why the old ones, those who carved truth into stone and prayed with dust on their tongues, spoke of a power older than the gods. Not a queen, not a monster, not a demon, a function, a law, a hunger that kept existence moving. They called her many things because no single word could hold her. But in the oldest whispers, she was known as the mother of the cycle, the goddess who gave birth every morning and devoured what she birthed every night, not out of cruelty, out of necessity, because without her the world would not burn. It would simply stop. In the beginning, the sky had no direction, no east, no west, no horizon to divide the unknown. There was only a vast black presence, a sea without water deeper than thought, and within it floated the first seed of order, a question without a voice. What if there could be a beginning? That question did not come from a man. It did not come from a god, because there were no gods yet. It came from something that even the gods later feared, the need for movement, the need for rhythm, the need for a heartbeat in a universe that had none. And that need took shape, not as a gentle mother with warm hands, but as a shadow with purpose. She did not arrive. She awakened, as if she had always been there, waiting for the world to finally deserve time. Her body was described in contradictions. A woman made of night, a beast made of gold, a throat that was an abyss, a wound that was a sunrise. Some said her eyes were like two moons drowned in ink. Others said she had no eyes at all, because she did not need to see. She only needed to continue. Where she stepped, the air learned to flow. Where she breathed, the void learned to separate itself into before and after, and in the place where her shadow fell, the first dawn was born. The first morning did not arrive gently. It tore through the darkness like a blade. Light burst into existence as if it had been trapped for eternity, and in that light the first gods opened their eyes. They were not kings yet. They were not rulers. They were newborn forces, raw and bright. The sky learned to stretch. The earth learned to harden. The river learned to run. The sun, young, violent, unstoppable, rose for the first time, and the gods rejoiced. They believed they had conquered the dark. They believed they had won. But the oldest priests never agreed with that story, because they knew the gods were not the beginning. They were the morning product. The goddess had birthed them the way a fire births sparks, and sparks must return to the fire or the fire dies. The first evening was not beautiful. It was terrifying. When the sun lowered its face toward the edge of the world, the gods thought it was going to rest. They were young. They did not understand the cost of rhythm. Then the air grew heavy, as if the universe remembered the silence it came from. A shadow rose beyond the horizon, and the world shuddered like an animal sensing a predator. The mother of the cycle returned. Not to punish, not to take revenge, to finish what she began. She opened her mouth and the sky seemed to bend toward it. Her throat was not a place. It was a return, a passage back into the womb of night. The sun screamed without sound. The gods ran, but there was nowhere to run, because time itself was her territory. And one by one she swallowed what she had birthed. The sun first, then the gods that followed it like loyal flames, then the last pieces of light trembling in the corners of the world. And when she was done, there was night, a complete, absolute night. The world did not end. It simply returned to her. This is the part the storytellers always soften. They try to turn her into a villain. They try to turn the gods into victims. But the priests of the earliest temples, those who spoke with snakes in their dreams and saw the desert move like breathing skin, said something colder. She ate because she had to, because if the morning creatures remained outside her, they would grow unstable. They would multiply without limit. Light would become noise. Order would become madness. And time would collapse under its own weight. So she devoured, not out of hate, out of balance. She was the law that prevented existence from tearing itself apart. The priests called it the price of dawn. To be born is to be temporary. To shine is to be borrowed. The sun was never a king. The sun was a child she allowed to live for one day. As the ages passed, humans began to listen, not because they were wise, but because they were afraid. They saw the sun rise and feared the day it wouldn't. They saw the sun set and feared the night that might never end. So they built temples and carved the story into stone, but they hid the deepest part behind sealed doors. There were chambers in ancient Egypt that no tourist will ever see. Walls painted with scenes that do not appear in textbooks. Not because they are lost, because they were sealed on purpose. In those chambers, the priests wrote a warning. The cycle is not automatic. It is maintained, and the one who maintains it is not kind. She is not cruel either. She is hungry, and hunger does not negotiate. The priests believed there were rituals that aligned the world with her rhythm, offerings placed at the right moment, words spoken at the edge of dusk, silence kept at the exact breath between sunset and full night. They did not pray to stop her. They prayed to keep her satisfied, because they understood something that most people cannot accept. Sometimes the reason your world continues is because something older and darker is still doing its job. But humans, as always, did what they were never meant to do. They imagined themselves as saviors. They asked the forbidden question, what if we could break the cycle? What if the sun did not have to be swallowed? What if the gods could remain forever? What if night could be defeated permanently? At first it sounded like hope. Then the priests realized it was the most dangerous idea a mind could hold, because the cycle was not a prison. It was a structure. Remove one pillar and the roof does not open. It collapses. The old texts say there were heretics, priests who stopped fearing the goddess and started hating her. They called her a tyrant. They swore they would steal the sun from her mouth. They believed they would save the world. The highest priests did not argue with them. They didn't debate. They simply whispered one sentence. If the cycle is broken, the world will not die. It will forget how to exist. This is where the myth turns into warning, not a prediction, a threat. The text describes a moment that has never happened and may never happen, but could. A moment where someone is foolish enough, brave enough, or desperate enough to interrupt her at dusk, to step into the place between day and night, to reach into her shadow, to pull the sun back out. If that happened, the world would not explode. There would be no fire raining from the sky, no armies of demons, no dramatic trumpet of judgment. It would be quieter, worse, because time would hesitate. The morning would come twice, overlapping like a mistake. The sky would not know what color to be. Birds would sing and then freeze mid-note. Water would ripple and then stop, holding the shape of motion like glass. And in that hesitation, reality would begin to unravel, not like fabric tearing, like a memory fading. People would wake up and not remember their names. Mothers would look at their children and feel nothing, not love, not hate, just blankness. Cities would still stand, but they would feel unreal, like props on a stage. And then the most terrifying thing would happen. The sun would rise, and it would not feel warm, because warmth is part of the cycle. Meaning is part of the cycle. Without her devouring, the day would not be a blessing. It would be a malfunction, a light that does not belong anywhere, a brightness with no purpose. And the goddess, the mother of the cycle, would not rage like a villain. She would simply open her mouth wider, because if you steal from the law of time, time will take it back, and it will take more than you stole. The texts say she would begin to devour not only the sun, but the edges of the world, the borders between things, the line between dream and waking, the line between life and death, the line between past and future, until all of existence became one continuous, swallowed night, not because she wanted apocalypse, but because balance had been shattered and hunger had to restore it. In one ruined temple, half buried in sand, there is a carving most scholars avoid, a single line that appears under a faded image of a goddess with a dark mouth and hands lifted toward the horizon. The line is incomplete. The last symbols are damaged, erased by time, or intentionally destroyed. But the part that remains has been translated like this: she births the world at dawn. She eats it at dusk. Do not make her choose between mercy and necessity, because she will not choose mercy. She will choose necessity. And necessity does not care about your prayers. Here is the truth the myth leaves in your hands. Your world has never been safe. It has simply been stable. Not because you are protected, not because you deserve it, but because the cycle has not been interrupted. Because the mother of the cycle has never missed a night. She has never hesitated. She has never stopped eating. And that is why the sun still returns. So when you watch the sunset and feel something in your chest, a strange weight, a sudden sadness, understand that feeling is older than you. It is the ancient part of your soul remembering the law. Because deep inside, even if you pretend you don't, you know, night is not just night. Night is the world being taken back. And morning is not a gift. Morning is the world being loaned again. If you ever hear a story, a modern story whispered online or written in a forgotten book about someone who found an Egyptian ritual to stop the devourer, if you ever see a video claiming to reveal the words that can break the cycle, do not repeat them. Do not test them. Do not become the person who thinks they are brave enough to interfere with the oldest hunger in existence. because if the cycle is broken, the world will not scream, it will not bleed, it will not burn. It will simply begin to fade, like a dream you cannot hold on to. And then one night, you will look at the horizon and realize the sun is late, not because it has been defeated, but because something somewhere has prevented it from being swallowed. And that is not salvation. That is the first crack in reality, the first breath of a quiet apocalypse, the kind that does not announce itself until it is already too late.